Hey there, and welcome to Trotting Through Life, the feel-good journey through wellness reimagined. I'm your host, Alicia Trotter, holistic health coach, retreat leader, and lover of all things simple, soulful, and sustainable. Each week, I'm here to share mindset shifts, wellness hacks, and down-to-earth tips to help you feel better in your body, your mind, and your life without all the overwhelm. Because wellness doesn't have to be complicated. Hello, and welcome back to Trotting Through Life. I'm your host, Alicia Trotter. And today, I'm super excited to have a conversation with Cindy Dupuie and her functional integrative nutrition background, where she's going to talk to us probably more for the women in the audience, but also your men that care so much about your lovely ladies in your life. This would be a good thing for you to know as well. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us what she does and how we can work with her. So take it away, Cindy.
Okay, Alicia, thank you so much for having me. So I can start talking and not take a breath. So if wave your hand at me or whatever's going, wait, I want to ask something. So I have my degree in dietetics and food administration, which is why I call myself a nutritionist, but I really didn't do anything with it. I got it many, many moons ago. And then I had a family and was working for my then husband in the used car business. So that was quite a departure from, what I got my degree in. And then when I was 43, I was going through a divorce and my whole life, kind of went upside down. And I threw myself actually into menopause at the young age of 43. That's fairly young. Average age is about 50, although I'm seeing it get a little bit higher here, at least in the States. It's like, huh. But so I threw myself into menopause. I was menstruating, once 1 month, and then the next month I lost my period and never got them back. And it
Mm,
was a couple different reasons for that. I mean, one, there was, quite a bit of stress in my life at that point in time. I was kind of on survival mode. And then I tend to be the type of person that will be not anxious. I don't consider myself an anxious person, but my appetite kind of goes away and I
mhm.
want to be in control. So maybe I'm not anxious, but I'm really fighting to be in control.
I feel you on that.
Yeah, so I actually lost too much weight. That's what happened with me. And then when you lose that much weight, your body says, excuse me, I don't have enough fat, I don't have enough cholesterol to make your hormones, and we are not going to be making any hormones because that's not what I need to prioritize right now. So that's what threw me into menopause. And you would think 2 years later or so, when I kind of turned the ship around, that my body would turn back on, but it decided not to. So I've been in menopause for a long time. Right at that time as well, my digestive system just kind of shut down, and I didn't know exactly what was going on. I would say that I've always had some issues with
Mhm.
constipation, probably my whole life. Not horrible, but definitely kind of bothersome. And when I started going through this period of my life, I really was very constipated and very bloated. And, I even went to a naturopath and she did a functional stool test. So we really
Mhm.
looked at what was going on. And unfortunately, and I still see this happen with some of my clients that come in that have these tests done. It's like, great. And I'll say, okay, so what were the comments? What were the, suggestions? And I still find this. And there's a lot to deal with every single patient or client that you see. There's a lot of
Mhm.
different levels, and we all have our biases. We all have our areas of focus. We can't avoid that. So that's why it's kind of nice to have a couple different people on your team so you can
Mhm.
get a couple different views, a couple different ideas of how to go about things. But anyway, this naturopath, I don't even remember what her recommendation was other than digestive enzymes. That was it.
Yeah.
And I went, okay. And
Mhm.
then, it really didn't help that much. And I found functional medicine around that time. I kind of wanted to get back into the body because that's my first love. I think the human body is absolutely amazing and interesting and exciting. So I wanted to get back into, I thought, okay, nutrition, what do I do now? I don't, I've been out of it for so long. Well, the first thing I did was I became a yoga instructor and did that first, which I still teach 23 years
Nice.
later. I love it. And
Mm.
then I just went to this lecture that this woman was having, and she had Dr. Mark Hyman's book,
Mm-hmm.
The Ultimate Metabolism. Now, this is a long time ago. Okay. So I got
Hmm.
into functional medicine 25 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of a long time ago, kind of at the beginning. Anyway, so I discovered Mark Hyman, read his book. I still have his book, and it's still stickies all over it. It was like I went, okay, I found this makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then through Dr. Mark Hyman, I ended up finding the Institute of Functional Medicine. They were having a training out here in California, and it's a 6 day, very intensive training. And I thought, I gotta go. So I
Mm-hmm.
paid my money, I went, and I happened to, when you go to something like that, you kind of sit in the same spot every day. So you kind of get to know the person that's next to you.
Yeah.
So I sat next to this wonderful, darling naturopathic doctor from Canada. And when they got to the day of the portion of digestion, I just was going, oh my gosh. And we started to talk a little bit, and she says, well, do you have that test that you had done? I said, yes, I do. I'll bring it tomorrow. I'm going home tonight. I'll bring it tomorrow. And she looked at
Mhm.
it and she said, you're not making any stomach acid. You're dumping out your fat. I mean, she went through all these things. So that was the start of me healing my digestive system. It wasn't the end all be all, but it definitely put me in the right direction.
Thank God for
Yeah,
people being in the right place at the right time.
exactly, exactly. And I do think that we do get there, eventually, as long as we stay open and stay curious. And that's what I always try to tell people to do. It's like, no matter how bad it feels, just stay open and curious. And I think things will eventually, kind of come together and help guide you get to the right people and
Hmm.
to heal yourself. So, if you've ever had any digestive issues,
Yes, I have.
yes, you know how debilitating it can be and how interruptive in your whole entire life and how it can affect I mean, so many different levels, not only being comfortable, but being able to eat foods or not be able to eat foods. There's so much that goes into being able to break down and absorb your nutrients. I mean, that's super important. So many different areas of your body can be affected, your brain, thyroid, everything can be affected. So, that was kind of my building block. I kind of became, that was what I was focusing on for many years, both men and women. And as I became more knowledgeable just generally in functional medicine, I mean, I continued to take courses and classes, and you learn from your clients. They teach you
Hmm.
all the time.
Yes.
And they're our best teachers, I would say. And I kind of went along. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I was looking at my female clients. I was looking at my contemporaries, and I'm 68. So, my contemporaries, we've been in menopause for, 15, 20 years by now.
Hmm.
And I was just seen as lose ground, not me in particular. And I will back up a little bit. I was put on HRT at age 50, so about 7 years after I went into menopause. I didn't ask for it. I didn't know to ask for it. This
Hmm.
doctor just happened to put me on it, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And how many women have so many issues, especially perimenopause, with
Hmm.
sleep, with sweats, with memory issues, with anxiety, depression, gut issues can definitely be
Hmm.
part of it, thyroid issues. I would say that probably some anxiety and mood issues were a little bit a part of it, but I don't know how much actually was a loss of hormones and how much was my adrenals and how much it was going on in my life. I really don't know. So at the age of 50, what I remember I was still kind of suffering from is urgency incontinence. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oops, you gotta go now. And then also I would say response to intimacy had
Hmm.
definitely waned. So
Yeah.
those are the only two things that I can think of. And she put me on a low dose because at that point in time, if they were doing HRT, because that was definitely not popular back
Right.
then, right? 18 years ago. They put me on a low dose bias, which is a estriol and estradiol.
Mm-hmm.
Estriol is very weak, and so it was about 80% estriol and about 20% estradiol. So I'm kind of getting the weeds here, but it's a good conversation to have at one point in time. I don't know if this is the time to have it, but it definitely has changed a bit
Right.
on what doctors will do. So anyway, I was on a low dose transdermal cream. And I went along my merry way until about 13 years ago. And then when I really started to research more about hormones, because again, my clients were losing ground and I knew how they ate. I knew their gut health. I knew their lifestyle. And I'm going, I'm missing a piece. I'm
Mm-hmm.
missing a piece. And before, kind of the old school of thought, it was like I would ask the cursory question on my intake form, well, how's your libido dropped? And, you know, almost everyone would say yes. And I would say, okay, does that matter to you? And they would say, no, my husband's not interested. And that happens because men lose their testosterone, right? So that
Right.
kind of happens at the same time. In men, if you are listening, okay, testosterone and estrogen, okay, are really, in my opinion, but in other doctors' opinions, I'm not a doctor, but in other professionals' opinion, it is the coin of the realm when we talk about longevity. It's not the end all be all by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, it's all the other things that we have to have in place too. But that is what I like to consider the icing on the cake. So we have to have the other things happening as well. So I would just ask it in relationship to libido. And if they didn't really care about it, we would just go on with life because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand all the things that estrogen and progesterone and testosterone do for our whole body. Estrogen hits every cell and tissue and organ in our bodies. And you'll hear me. You can hear I do have a bias, if that's what you want to call it, towards HRT. I do.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some women who can make it to the end and they do really well. And, if their labs come back great, if they're feeling great, if their bones are great, all that's working. We don't need to fix anything then, but I would
Right.
say that's a small percentage of women, at least that what comes into my office, okay? My virtual office, by the way.
Yes. Nice.
So, yeah, so when I started digging into it, I learned so much and I went, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And I changed my regimen, my hormone, what I was doing. I kind of hacked a few things just so I would have the experience so I could talk about it, right? It
Yeah.
helps. And one really did not work for me. And I'm actually trying something new now. I've always been on creams
Mm-hmm.
and I'm kind of tired of paying out of pocket. So I thought, let me try the patch.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have a doctor that I have strictly for my hormones. And then I am in an HMO and I'm on Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
And I just switched my HMOs this year and I thought I want to find a doctor who will support me in my HRT. Okay.
Very important. Yes.
Very important. And so I went to DO thinking, you know, they're going to have a little bit broader lens about
Right.
things. I was so disappointed. I went in. One of the first things she said to me, she goes, "You're still on hormone replacement therapy?" I said, "Yes, I am, and I have no plans of stopping."
Mm-hmm.
And she gave me this look, and I went, "Oh, really?" And
Yeah.
so,
Immediately, you were probably like, "Yeah, you're not a good fit for me."
no, but you know what? Yes, and I'm the type, I'm either fight or flight, and I didn't want to fight with her. So I kind of shut down. And
Mm-hmm.
then I thought about it and said, Cindy, you have to go through this exercise so you can help your clients go through the same exercise.
Right. So you can teach them how to become an advocate for themselves.
Exactly. And I know so much. And I thought, okay, you don't get to run on this one, girlfriend. You have to stay here. And so what I did is I messaged her and I said, hey, this is a line in the sand for me. I need the support. I would like to be with a doctor who does support me and understands my whole body. And I also, and I don't think she ever looked at it, I also attached the 2022 NAMS report, North
Hmm.
American Menopause Society report, which is still very conservative, but it was still less conservative than what was coming out of her mouth as to why she didn't want me to. So her reasoning was at my age that there's a higher risk of stroke. Okay. Now, first of all, that comes from the WHI study, which I don't know. Did you guys talk about the WHI
I
study?
don't think I don't think we did in that interview with Dr. Dana. So share
Okay.
about that.
The I study is the Women's Health Initiative study, and it is the study, it's a big, huge randomized clinical trial, very big, very expensive, and that was basically completed or stopped in 2003. Now, ladies, this study is what has framed and formed the narrative that we have had for over 2 decades. Okay.
Of the link with hormone replacement and cancer.
Yes, with the link
Okay.
with hormone, thank you for clarifying that. That, yes, hormone replacement therapy causes cancer. So let me back up for just a second so you have a little bit of an understanding of where that comes from because I think it's really important. It's an
Hmm.
important piece. So, first of all, the average age of the woman that was in the study was 63, average. Okay. So
Okay.
we had women in their 70s, we had women maybe in their 50s. Average, let's say 63. That is 13 years out from
Hmm.
menopause for the average woman. Okay. That's 13 years of a lot of inflammation because there's no estrogen on board.
Hmm.
13 years of who knows how she's been eating. None of these women were screened for heart disease. None of these women were screened for high blood pressure or cancer either. So there was no screening prior to that. Having said that, the only arm, so this particular study had three groups or three arms. So we had the estrogen only arm, we had the estrogen progestin, and I'm being very purposeful when I pronounce progestin versus progesterone, okay?
Right.
Yeah, and then we had the placebo. So it was the estrogen progestin arm, which is where there was, and I'm putting in air quotes, you can't see me probably, but I'm putting in air quotes the problem of causing more cancer. But even that wasn't statistically significant. It was an increase of 1 in 1,000 women. That's not statistically significant. So
Hmm.
that was the only arm, okay, that showed just a very slight tick. But it's also really important to understand the type of hormones that they used.
Yeah.
First
Synthetic,
of
not bioidentical.
First of all, they were not bioidentical, right? We had the progestin for the progesterone, and our bodies treat it very, very differently.
Hmm.
And then we had an oral estrogen, okay? It wasn't
Okay.
transdermal, it was oral. And then the type of estrogen, that's not as big of a deal as the fact it was oral. The type of estrogen was from horses, the urine from pregnant mares. So obviously not bioidentical.
Right.
Yeah, so we have all of these factors that come into why this study was flawed. And even with the information from the study, there were actually a lot of positive things that came out of it. And NAMS, North American Menopause Society, I know they took off the North American, so it's American Menopause Society. They still refer back to that heavily whenever they come up with a new statement. And the statements keep on changing because they are looking into it more carefully, right? So, oral estrogen can increase the risk of stroke because it has to go through that hepatic pass. All right.
Yes. I know anything we take orally also has to be processed through the liver.
Right, that's the hepatic pass through
And
the
so
liver. Hmm.
if you're estrogen dominant anyways and your liver can't recycle out old estrogen, then this is the gut component that I tell people. I'm like, this is why all of this is connected. You need to know all of these things. So keep going.
Yeah, you do need to know all these things, and there is a gut component to menopause and to HRT. I would say that most women, by the time they hit menopause, the estrogen dominant thing really doesn't play a factor here. It's more what you do with your estrogen, and that's where there'd be
Mm-hmm.
like the Dutch test or something like that
Right.
that you might want to do. Okay. But yes, the fact that it has to go through the liver and hepatic pass, that is where you have more propensity for stroke risk
Mm-hmm.
in the oral of estrogen only, not progesterone. And but I would like to talk more about gut with both of those hormones, just because there can be a really important piece that women need to know that we just don't talk about. You don't hear about it. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, going back to her concern of me having a stroke, and you might be a little bit more concerned if you hadn't looked at inflammatory markers, right? A woman's
Mm-hmm.
inflammatory markers, you do need to look at that. And maybe there would be a little bit more of a risk, possibly, maybe, but no. If she hadn't already been on,
And
HRT.
isn't when you were talking earlier about estrogen and testosterone and longevity, don't these hormones have protective
Yes.
mechanisms about them? So when we lose them, we're losing that protectiveness. So, like
Perfect.
cardiovascularly protective, neurologically protective. And so, that doctor not thinking you needed to be on it, like
Is
she's,
missing yeah,
mhm,
she's doing what doctors do. They got their blinders on.
right.
And, you know, a lot of women feel like, and I don't personally like this word, gaslighted. And I don't
Hmm.
think that people are purposefully bad
Hmm.
and doctors are purposefully bad.
Right.
But people need to understand that once the WHI study came out and there was that verdict that it causes cancer, there was no training about perimenopause and menopause in middle school or HRT. It was done. Done, done,
Right.
done, done, done. So if a doctor is going to go outside of the box, they have to have the time, the bandwidth, right? And the desire to do it. And even training through NAMS, ladies and gentlemen, okay? When I see a doctor's trained through NAMS, I just kind of go, all right, it's at least it's an opening. It's a door that's open. That woman is not going to be, unless that doctor goes out and gets additional training, that woman is not going to be supported adequately. I see it again and again and again.
Yeah, they literally have to, like you said, have the desire and the bandwidth to go
Hmm.
research and study and
Hmm.
find this out on their own
Yes, they do.
because
They
it's not
do.
being taught in medical school at all.
No, not at all. So the interesting thing is I came back again because I had to have something else followed up on. And so we had our other discussion. I said, she goes, I saw your message that you sent me. And I said, I just am not comfortable. And I said, okay, but this is really important to me. She says, well, I'm okay if I refer you out and they prescribe for you, then I'm okay. So, in other words, she wasn't comfortable. She doesn't have the knowledge. I said, okay, that's fair. That's okay.
Hmm.
And so that did happen. But the interesting thing, and the thing is, I had a full cardio workup the year or so before because I had some heart palpitations and something else happened a couple of years ago. And I thought, okay, insurance can pay for it all. Let's just get it checked out. So I did, and I was
Hmm.
fine. And I'm probably the healthiest 68-year-old woman she has in her office.
Right.
It's like, come on, you guys, connect some dots here. And this gets even better because I'd also send her over my DEXA scan. And do you know how many women who are age 68 who've never had a DEXA scan, which is absolutely ridiculous? Ladies, don't wait till you're 65. Ask your doctor or pay for it yourself. It's maybe $125 to get a bone scan. You need
Hmm.
to know women who are, I would say, perimenopausal, get a nice baseline then to see what's going on. And there's a lot of risk factors to bone loss that a lot of women don't even think about. It's not on their radar, it's not on doctors' radars as to why you really need to get it at a younger age and track it. So anyway, I got my DEXA scan back. I look good, which is kind of unusual at 68. And unfortunately, and as she was walking out the door, we're done talking. She spent another 20 minutes with me, which I appreciated. She was much more relaxed this time. I think I was too. And she's walking out. She says, by the way, she goes, I saw your DEXA. She smiled at me. She says, you know that's your estrogen. And I just kind of went, my head just shook. I didn't, but in my inside, I'm like, why are you not connecting these dots? You're acknowledging the fact, the reason that my bones are looking good is because of estrogen. That is part of the picture. It's obviously not the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
But what women don't realize is that estrogen was approved by the FDA in 1975 to prevent osteoporosis.
Wow.
Yeah. And then once the WHI study came out in 2003, do you remember Sally Fields of the Flying Nun?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she was the spokesperson for Boniva, which is a biphosphonate. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So that came out in 2003, like gangbusters. To
Interesting.
Yes, isn't it interesting? And there
Mm-hmm.
is, ladies, there is a prescription drug for everything that ails you as a
Yes.
result of loss of hormones. There is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to make you better. But I also want to say just slapping on hormones is not going to make you better. And I'm seeing something that just kind of not ticked me off, but I just went, whoa, we need to have a conversation about this. And that is, a lot of perimenopausal women were not getting the support I think they needed, a lot of them. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe they needed hormonal support and they weren't getting it. But what I'm starting to see now is way more hormonal support without doing the thorough testing. Here again, we're just focusing on one thing, which is what doctors are taught to do, even if they're general practitioners. So instead of doing a whole thorough blood workup, so we look at the thyroid, we can see what's happening. We look at insulin, we look at inflammatory markers, your whole iron panel, your homocysteine, so your B12 and folate. I mean, looking at the whole panel to see a lot of the things that we experience during perimenopause can be due to other things that are going on in our bodies. So if we just slap or try to slap on, because it's not going to work, try to
Mm-hmm.
slap on HRT, okay, and not address any of those other things, it's going to fail.
Right.
It's
Because
going to
so
fail.
much of it, people don't realize like thyroid has to do with hormones, insulin
Hmm.
has to do with hormones.
Hmm.
And when you're only, like you said, addressing one thing and our body is a whole system,
Yeah.
you're not necessarily going to get those results that you look for and feel better because you're not looking at the body as a whole
Yep.
system. And so, one thing I'm going to ask you to just say for the audience, people that maybe don't have a medical background, when you're saying inflammation markers,
Mm.
like what should they ask for on their labs? Because a lot of times insurance is only going to cover like a CBC, and then they're maybe not even going to get an A1C. They're definitely not going to get an insulin resistance
No.
tested or just a fasting insulin level, period. You have to
Right.
ask for those things. But
You do, and you have to kind of work the system. And sometimes, and we're really lucky in the United States that we can order our own labs. And there's plenty of companies that offer them very reasonably. I offer them, I can order labs for my clients on a cash basis. So we get as much done as we possibly can through the provider. And then if we can't get like insulin, maybe
Mhm.
reverse T3, maybe some other things, they just homocysteine, then we'll just do those markers through my lab. Okay. So it's not that difficult to get. Two of the inflammatory markers, well, actually, insulin is. And, a lot of people, so I just want to stop here on the insulin for just a second. A lot of people say, well, my insulin is fine. And it's what they're referring to as glucose because we
Right.
associate glucose with insulin. It's two completely different things. And
Mm-hmm.
A1C is, so let me talk about insulin for 1 second. I'm a little ADD. I go off to the A1C. So let's go back to insulin, Cindy. All right. So insulin obviously works hard to keep our body in homeostasis, works hard to keep that blood sugar, that glucose, where it's supposed to be, within that range of where it's supposed to be. But if we are continually eating fairly poorly and our bodies just can't handle it, and we're all different at what we can and cannot eat, let's say we have a lot of inflammation in our body that dries up glucose and
Mm-hmm.
cortisol, and then dries up glucose. Okay, so we have inflammation and other things going on. Stress can drive it up. There's a lot of different factors that can drive your glucose up. And so every
Mm-hmm.
time you glucose up, your body produces insulin to go out there, right? And grab that excess glucose that we can't use right now. And where do we put it? We put it in a fat cell for storage.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about it, insulin is a fat storing hormone. If
Yep.
you have high insulin, you cannot lose weight. You cannot. It's like you're beating your head up against the wall. So that's one thing. So what makes the insulin start to go up even when you're fasting is you become more insulin resistant. Your body just gets used to having a certain amount there because it's going, okay, I got to be out here because that glucose is going to go up again.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why it will be elevated. And it usually starts to go up 10 years before your A1C will go up and you're quote unquote pre-diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
So insulin is an inflammatory marker. I even consider homocysteine kind of to be an inflammatory marker, more for heart health. And homocysteine is a back-ended way of measuring your folate and B12. I know some doctors will go ahead and do that for you. They'll do the direct measure on serum, they will blood,
Mm-hmm.
they will do it, but it doesn't tell us what your body's doing with it. So I have found, and even when I've done an oats test and looking at the metabolites of vitamins, it doesn't correlate with the serum when it comes to folate and B12, to the B vitamins. It doesn't correlate.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to do homocysteine. HSCRP is
Mm-hmm.
also a very, or even just plain CRP. Okay, those is C-reactive protein. So
Yes.
that can be, it's is a really good measure that you do want to have. And then ferritin, which might sound kind of like, really, why ferritin? Because ferritin is a form of iron storage. It is. But it's also a marker of inflammation. So if it is high and elevated, there's probably something right now going on that's causing inflammation. CRP is kind of a low behind the scenes, and ferritin
Mm-hmm.
is kind of like right now. And when I see just a doctor doing ferritin and they're not doing iron, I got to see the whole thing because I
Right.
can see ferritin good, but I can see low iron, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is telling me the body's sequestering the iron for some reason, all right? And but we're still low iron or vice versa. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why it's really important to have a whole iron panel along with the ferritin. So those would be probably my inflammatory markers. Sed rate too kind of gives us an idea of how sticky things are. And the more inflamed we are, the more sticky our blood gets. So those would be basically the four inflammatory markers that you would want to have. And the HSCRP and an iron panel and ferritin shouldn't be that hard to get
Right. I know. I feel like if you know what you
to
need
ask
to
for.
going
Mhm.
in, yeah, you can ask for those things to be added on there. And I mean, if your doctor doesn't want to test for those things, you need to find a different doctor because if you know, have done your research and you know what you're looking for, it shouldn't bother them to have that tested.
It shouldn't. And, sometimes some of them are really good at knowing how to code so that insurance will cover it,
Yes, my
right?
practitioner is good at that. She knows all the codes so that my
And
insurance will
so you
cover
kind
it.
and then they're more comfortable with it. They don't have to work so hard. They're more comfortable with it, so they can get it done. And if you have a high deductible, because I'm sure a lot of your audience is in the US, maybe just going to like Function Health,
Mm-hmm.
and they do a great job, I think, for just about $300. I mean, they test a lot of different things. And I would say I can't beat them. I'm probably pretty close. My price is so I know.
Yeah.
I kind of know what's out there. But it's not that expensive to really get thorough blood work if you don't even want to mess with a doctor, okay, and mess
Mm-hmm.
with your deductible. You can do that. And it's well worth every single penny. Having said that, once you get your lab work back and you have the AI report that you're going to get from Function Health or from anyone else, okay, and even the ones that I do, I mean, you do get an AI report from the lab or from Full Scripts. You have to have someone interpret it, okay?
That's what I was gonna say. You don't
Yeah,
know
it's
what you're looking at, probably.
yeah, and if you want to go to Chatter AI, these companies have already done that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to have someone that understands how to put your history. So it's not just right then. We have to see what your body does and where it likes to be most of the time, and then we see a change. It's like, oh, and whereas for someone else, it's just kind of how they hang, right? And we have
Right.
to know what's going on with you right now, and the symptoms of person that is in front of us right now, and then also connect the dots within the markers within
Mm-hmm.
the lab. And I use AI once in a while, but I know the prompts, and I had a very complicated. She'd been with me for a while, but yeah, she had been with a couple different doctors, and one doctor was doing thyroid, one doctor was doing her hormones, and I'm going, okay. And I'm trying to support her the best I can, but this
Mm-hmm.
last set of labs, I said, time out, time out here. And for me to put together how complicated it was to put it together in a cohesive way so she could understand it and understand why I was recommending the steps that I was recommending. I did have AI. I go, okay, I need help on how to put this together. And then I would prompt it, right?
Right.
Okay, what
Yeah.
about this? And da 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 da. So you can't go to AI and do it for you guys. You just can't. So you have to have
Mm-mm.
someone that's very knowledgeable and can put you on the right path and then help you adjust things as you go forward. You just do. And I do, Alicia, I do have a wonderful PDF that it's a lab checklist
Okay.
for women in the pause years, and it's free. And if I haven't sent you that link, I'll send it to you.
Yes.
And it lists all the tests that I recommend, why, and how to ask for it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, and I can add that link to the show notes on
Good.
this
Okay, I'll
episode.
make sure I do that after we're done talking.
Okay.
Yeah, so that kind of, talking about HRT beginning, in perimenopause, and again, I'm not opposed to it, but I just feel like there's so many things that there's an opportunity to really help a woman on so many other different levels that she needs to be helped on
Mm-hmm.
that we've almost corrected, we've overcorrected to prescribing
Yeah.
too soon.
And I think, too, a lot of what I see, and you touched on this in the beginning when you were sharing your story, because the same thing happened to me, is when we start that perimenopause, if you don't also acknowledge, like, how are you eating? How are you eliminating? What is your stress level like? Because that's going to be your cortisol wearing
Uh-huh.
out your adrenals. This can also add to the mix. So, like if you do a Dutch test, which you mentioned, it's
Hmm.
going to show you a really good picture, including that cortisol, the DHEA, what pathway your hormones might be going down, which could
Hmm.
be the wrong pathway,
Hmm.
damaging DNA.
Hmm.
And
Obviously know about Dutch. Okay,
yes,
yeah.
I've had a Dutch test done myself.
Okay.
And I like that. I know it's a little bit expensive, but I like that as like the very first baseline when you're before you start HRT or anything like that, because I feel like it shows a picture into, maybe she doesn't think she's stressed out because she's ADHD and loves burning the candle at both ends and flying around like a hummingbird on crack, and she doesn't realize that she's that stressed out. But I'm like,
Yeah.
well, how do you sleep too? Like, are you waking up
Yeah.
at that, what I call the cortisol witching hour of 1 to 3, and you can't go back to
Yes.
sleep? And it's just, there's so many things that you need a practitioner or someone who can sit down. I'm going to hear you. I'm going to ask you some questions too that you
Hmm.
might not even be
Hmm.
considering.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
that whole dysregulation of the central nervous system that can also be causing problems as
Oh
well.
yeah.
And,
Oh yeah.
you know, you can end up with your thyroid being getting off track. And if you're only looking at the TSH and not the T3, T4 reverse, but a lot of just regular general practitioners are not testing for these things. So you're sliding through and not ever getting those things addressed. And then if you do start HRT and you're still not feeling good,
We're
this is
still not addressing those things. And
we're
they're,
still.
yeah,
Hmm.
and you're just in a more vulnerable position when you start to lose your hormones. And so everything that maybe was a little bit off, all of a sudden becomes very amplified.
Hmm.
And again, if you're not addressing that, you mentioned celiacs, right?
Hmm.
So I imagine it came to you in a vengeance around perimenopause?
So mine actually came when you said stress and you lost too much weight. That's exactly what happened to me.
Okay.
I had just had a baby and I turned 31 right after, which is not
Oh,
super
no,
late, but that's
no, it's
exactly when
not.
my something happened in my hormones right there. But it kind of started a little bit before that. When I first found out I was pregnant, I was telling my grandparents, and my grandpa died of a massive heart attack right there on the scene in front of me. And I think it just spiked
Mm.
my cortisol
Oh,
and left
yeah.
me in high adrenal function for my
Uh-huh.
entire pregnancy.
Uh-huh.
And then I
Mm.
tanked out after I had the baby. And so
Yeah.
that's what I think triggered. I lost all that weight really fast and it just like
Yes.
triggered an autoimmune response in my body.
So it was a trauma,
Yeah.
right? Totally. And your body responded to that, and the vagus nerve and everything else, and that affected your digestive system. And the interesting thing is, and I know we have to wrap it up pretty soon, but or at least I do. Sorry,
No,
I could
you're
talk forever. Is progesterone's really high and estriol is really high during pregnancy. And both of those dampen the immune response. And so often people with autoimmune disease will feel much, much, much better during pregnancy. And if
hmm
you think about what's happening during perimenopause, usually we lose our progesterone first, and then the estrogen follows. And so if we have autoimmune markers that doctors have never tested, we may have, Hashimoto's that hasn't affected our thyroid yet. Well, then they'll spike up and all of a sudden affect our thyroid. So that's why getting your antibodies, your thyroid antibodies is really
hmm
important too, so you know where they're at. And lots of doctors, they say, okay, we've determined that you have Hashimoto's because we've measured your antibodies, but they don't understand that you can reduce those antibodies so that it's not affecting your thyroid, so they will never test it again.
They
And
just
it's
are like, oh, you have Hashimoto's forever.
yeah, no, you can do something about it. And
Right.
often what we will see during menopause or perimenopause is those markers will go up because that progesterone has dropped. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Well, this has been so good and it's so insightful. And I hope that even just sharing that link about the labs that you
that work.
recommend
Yeah.
and can just help women start to take the charge for their own
Yes.
health, especially in, I'm going to say, starting at 35. Like
Yeah.
perimenopause can start that early. If you just simply don't feel like yourself or something feels off, your body is telling you something, listen to it. You're your advocate. No one
Hmm.
knows how you feel in your body. Only you can tell your practitioner or doctor how you feel. Hopefully, you have someone that's willing to listen, put
Hmm.
the pieces together with the lab work, and help you get a plan
Hmm.
going
Hmm.
forward. So, yeah, thank you
Yeah.
so
You
much for
guys
all
are
of this.
important. You're very important. And I am available. I'm available. I do all telehealth now. And I do have a new course starting. I don't know when this is going to air, but I have, it's called Grace in Transition for women of a certain age. So a new cohort is starting on June 15th. And then the next cohort will probably be in September after school starts and everything settles down.
Yeah.
But it's an 8-week program. I'll send you a link for that so people can peruse and see what it's about. But it is a community of women, and we meet every week. It's 8 weeks. We go over everything. We go over lab work, we go over hormones, we go over gut health, we go over environmental health, we go over everything. And we're in this together, helping each other make changes as we're ready to during that 8 weeks and support each other And so I love that because I think it's one of the best ways to get the support that a woman needs and without a ton of paying a ton of money. And she's getting a lot of support. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And support, honestly, especially if you don't feel supported
Mm-hmm.
already, it's huge and it's calming. We need that
Yeah,
calm in our lives,
we do.
especially in the perimenopause stage where it can feel very, probably the majority of my friends and people I'm talking to that are the same age. I'm 48. And so early 40s and then into the mid 50s that I'm talking to, almost everyone has high cortisol. That is
Ugh.
really,
You're right at the age. I mean, there's so much going on in your lives right now.
yeah. And so I always tell women, listen, you are important. Like you are so important. You're managing everything for
Hmm.
everyone. And if you're not taking care of yourself, your kids want the best version of you. They don't want the mom that's on edge and irritated and can't sleep and drinking too much coffee and not feeding her
Hmm.
body right. Because when you start that weight gain because of the cortisol and the insulin spikes and
Hmm.
storing excess in your fat cells,
Hmm.
that can all be, I don't want to say fixed, that's the wrong word, but
It
there's
can,
help.
there is help, and I don't mind you using the word fixed. And it's like, okay, fixed means something's broken. All
Right.
right. It can all be, how about if we say you're just not broken and your body is so intuitive, given the right tools, it will heal itself.
Yes, that's the word we were looking for. Heal.
Healing. Well,
Yes.
we got there eventually.
Yeah, it's like you can get your body back in balance where you can shed the weight, where you can feel good, where you can sleep well, and you don't feel irritated and short fused. You just have to know what's happening in your body, get some labs, find someone to listen to you, and find someone who's concerned about that balance for you and
Hmm.
finding what's right for
Hmm.
you. So, hope is what we're sending. That's our message today.
Yes, yes, big hope, big hope. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Cindy, for being here. And I will put that link to your little freebie you have, and then also to your course that's coming up, and then also how they could get in touch with you if they want to
Wonderful.
work
Thank
with you.
you. Thank
Okay.
you for having me, Alicia. I appreciate it. Shout out to your audience. Yeah.
Yes. So if this resonated with you today or you made you think of someone, be sure to share it with them and then follow so you never miss an episode. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for trotting along with me today. If you loved this episode, be sure to follow the show and leave a quick rating or review. It helps more people find their way to simple, feel good wellness. I'll see you next Tuesday for another episode of Trotting Through Life. Until then, take a breath, take a step, and keep it uncomplicated.